Hey everyone, and welcome back to Tuesday Tips. My name is Michael Barber. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to Tuesday Tips, where we tackle all things challenges that school leaders are facing. We're here every week, usually on a Tuesday, but we're going early this week because Ryan, our guest, and my schedule are a little challenging tomorrow. So let me first say hello to my friend and colleague, Ryan Eldridge. Ryan, it is great to see your face. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Of course, we're happy to have you here. Ryan's a member of our team at Charter School Capital, and we decided this week we're going to tackle questions related to facilities financing, or what we like to say is money to buy your school. And I asked Ryan to come have a chat because he is so close to the conversations that school leaders are having related to this topic and just has a really good pulse on the questions related to what you do and as you're thinking about buying your school or the next place that you're going to create a space for kids to join your school. So, Ryan, I'm going to kick it off right at the top with this first question. We're somewhat past the start of the school year. Depending upon when you started, we're maybe a month or maybe 2 months into the start of the school year. What should school leaders be thinking about as it relates to their facility and this time of year? What should be on their minds right now?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think some of this is dependent on where you're located in the country, right? We're September, end of September, heading into October. That means we start heading into the darker months of the year, rainy weather, snowy weather. So first and foremost, I'd want to make sure that the kids are comfortable and that the teachers and the administrative staff are comfortable. So I would think first off, making that checklist regarding your furnaces, particularly for those in the northern part of the country, heaters, furnaces, making sure they're operationally sound. Your roof is always a big one, particularly as we get a lot of rain and snow, making sure that there's no leaks going through the building. And I think, as you take an assessment of just the overall functioning of a lot of the heating and cooling control systems in the building, that's a good area to start. Security measures are always a big one, just making sure that the kids are safe. And, whether that's cameras or, fences prohibiting kids to run out into pickup drop off areas, things of that nature, obviously a good assessment. But if you start to back out of it a little bit, I would also say, as you start to evaluate the overall, assuming those things are checked off the list, is how is the school fulfilling its mission and its vision?
Hmm.
Is there enough space? This time of year, often a lot of schools are experiencing growth in their enrollment. And due to that, now they might have some more overcrowding than they had the previous year. And so how can you alter some of the space to make up for this growth and enrollment? Is it starting to impact teachers losing office space or administrative space or common area meeting space? And so I think at this point, a lot of it is just kind of taking that assessment, seeing where you are today, and then saying, hey, do I have to start to plan for the next school year, particularly if I'm going to experience even further growth from that standpoint? And then the last thing I would just say is, what does that agreement look like? Is it a 1 year agreement? Some states have year-to-year agreements, some have longer-term leases, some own their homes, and they have no concerns over it. But for those schools in particular that are in either short or mid-term agreements, maybe taking a look at that agreement to make sure that they have enough time on that agreement going into the next year, and that they don't have to start planning immediately for a backup plan. So,
Yeah, so many good short-term tactical recommendations as well as some long-term and strategic recommendations there for you related to that question. I appreciate that. You touched on something, that's going to require maybe a school to start thinking about a new facility, and that's growth. If you have a significant waiting list, it might be time to start thinking about what does the next home for your school look like, or potentially an additional location. As we've gone through this pandemic and endemic period, we've seen significant changes to timelines for basically any scenario that school leader would be looking at for a new school, whether that be improving their existing school and growing within that environment, whether it being looking for a new location, or improving, their existing location, or building from ground up, right? So every scenario that a school leader is looking at right now is really, really the timelines are very different than what they used to be. Can you talk about the sort of, some high level thoughts around the timeline involved in getting into a new forever home, into a new facility for a school, whether it's ground up, whether it's brand new space, or whether it is, augmenting your existing space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. Let's face it, timing on these facilities projects, I'll say this first and foremost, is it always takes longer than expected. So you can never start too early. I think a good way to think about it is to really think about the end in mind and then to work backwards based on those timelines. So, what I mean by that is if your objective is to say, I want to move in to our new building in the fall of the 25 school year, FY25 school year, this how much time do I have to complete all these projects throughout the timeline? And so that is a good way to start with the end in mind and then work backwards. I would say when you're starting to consider your paths, one will probably take a lot longer than the other. And what I mean is, ground up construction is always going to take longer than, say, a renovation of an existing structure, simply because you're starting with something with an existing structure and can modify it, and oftentimes can make do with what is in place and move into that in a faster time frame than oftentimes a brand new buying a piece of dirt ground up construction process. If we're starting about a ground up construction process, you're talking about buying a piece of land. You're going to have to go through entitlements. You're going to have to go through environmental studies. You're going to have to go through traffic control studies, water, electricity. Is it on there? What is it going to take to get there? Just sheer zoning. Conditional use permits are going to run, in any case, on both type of properties. They used to run an educational facility there. But if you're starting going through a city planning division to find out how long it's going to take, I think you're going to find the ground up is always going to take longer. Now, the other part is, where are you located in the country, of course. Now, if you're
Mm.
located in, say, the heart of LA, very densely populated city, probably some more red tape to go through city planning, and that process could take significantly longer than, say, if you're in rural Oregon, where it may be a small town, smaller city planning division, and you can maybe make connections a little bit easier and kind of push things through a little faster. So first off, where you're located, too, is the type of project. I think an existing structure, we've seen timelines, and I'll just give you a high level what we're seeing out there. Oftentimes, a project like that might take a year to complete from the time that you locate a property, actually submitting and start going through permitting and or conditional use permit process, and then the actual construction and renovation. A realistic time frame could take place within about a 12-month period of time to get into that new building. Whereas a ground up construction, realistically, you're looking at about a 2-year window from the time that you actually locate a piece of land, go through all of the process, and then actually able to construct it. And even those are pretty condensed. I'm saying in a best case scenario, those are probably, some realistic timeframes to keep in mind. But again, things always take longer. You never know what's going to pop up, and sometimes that timeline could push. So
Yeah, I think the tip that you had is start with the end in mind is so important, right? Does it fulfill the goals of what that new home needs to be? Does it meet the mission of what you're trying to do as a school? I love that idea of start with the end in mind and then work backward, because maybe one of the solutions that you're not considering might be the right one given that framework. I want to ask you one last question. We keep these conversations to about 10 minutes, and we are at the 9-minute and 30-second mark, but you've given us so much good information. I want to give you the floor for this last question. On one of those scenarios, you decide to keep your existing building. What upgrades have you been seeing school leaders make that have really driven enrollment and helped serve kids better, really drive that growth opportunity for school? What's happening out there right now that's attracting kids and the families that support those kids to make a school choice?
yeah, I mean, that's a great question too. And I think, again, it's going to depend on the program you're running. Are we talking about a TK through 6 model, a TK through 8 model, or are we talking about a high school model, or even a TK through 12. And so, short answer, I think, on a lot of that is oftentimes the curb appeals, the signage. Sometimes schools have been in a place for a long period of time, but just really haven't been aware to the community that they're even there due to a lack of signage or curb appeal from the standpoint of parents pulling up and dropping off and feeling comfortable. Playgrounds are always huge, particularly for the TK through 8s. I think anytime you get a brand new play area and you see kids out there playing and laughing and running around, right away it gives that school feel. For those in the Sun Belt, oftentimes providing some of that shade cover, in the outdoor play spaces makes a big difference for the summer months, the hot months of the year. Things such as kitchens. Oftentimes charter schools are forced to have to bring in food from an outdoor service area, and by being able to create a cafeteria or a kitchen program internally and having the kids actually eat there together can create some great situations for enrollment numbers, and then including just general outdoor play space, fields, gyms. We've seen a lot of different scenarios that have upgraded depending on where you're located. But just to name a few, I think that would cover it. Don't want to take up too much time here either.
No, such good recommendations, and I appreciate you being mindful of our 10-ish or so minute threshold with all things Tuesday tips. Really great knowledge, Ryan. Thank you for taking the time to join us and answer some questions related to how school leaders make decisions and what they should be thinking about related to their facilities. So a big thank you for joining us. We're here every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, sometimes different days, as you see today, depending upon schedule. Next week, we'll be back on Tuesday. I'm really happy to be bringing in one of our other team members, Tony Solorzano, to talk about enrollment marketing initiatives and what's working right now for school leaders, which will be a big topic as you start to think about kicking off your enrollment marketing programs in January. So we'll have Tony on next week. Who will just have returned back from the Texas Charter Schools Conference. So I'm sure he'll have some good perspectives to share with y'all here. And with that, I will say thanks again, Ryan. Appreciate you coming on. And we'll
Thank
see
you
y'all
for
next
having
week. Take care. Of
me. All
course, our pleasure.
right.